that was really what she deserved. Kind, gentle caregivers who didn't just care about doing their shift or making sure she had her medicine, but really engaged with her, and they really cared in a way that I wasn't prepared for. And I knew that New Wave would be safe and you know, they'd all have their notebooks and be taking notes, but I really hadn't appreciated how far these people were willing to go to make sure that my mother's quality of life was as good as it could possibly be. Even her declining moments where she had trouble getting out of bed, she was cranky and irascible and would not remember from one moment to the next why these people were here or what they were doing in her house. They were always patient with her and kind, and I never really had to worry about anything that was going on at the home when I was out doing my job and consulting with doctors and trying to figure out what we were going to do with her. The one thing I didn't have to worry about was her care, and that was just such a gift. And I really felt like at the end of her life we had so few treatments for her. As anyone with a parent with dementia knows, there's not a lot you can do medication wise. There's no cure. But what is a cure is treating someone with love and dignity and respect, and that every moment I felt like somebody was engaging with her and making sure she was clean and happy. And I would come home from work and she would have her lipstick on and her hair done and she would smell nice. And this was a woman who couldn't use the bathroom by herself, and that somebody had taken the time, one of these New Wave home care employees, to give her a shower even if I hadn't asked, and to make sure that her hair was pretty and that she had her favorite perfume on. And it felt so meaningful to me that when I was asked to do this testimonial, I knew I had to, because I'm in my 50s. I don't know anything about elderly people other than my own family. I certainly am not an expert in dealing with dementia, and these people were. And there would be this, you know, the 25-year-old caregiver who would come out, who would know everything about what to say and do and how to get her to eat, and, you know, how to convince her that something was safe even when she swore she wasn't going to eat anything else because it was being poisoned. The caregiver would know exactly what to say, and so she would eat her scrambled eggs and continue on for another day. And I can't tell you how happy it made us to be able to come over and see my mom sipping a Diet Pepsi, looking at her Wall Street Journal that she could no longer read or understand, but somebody had given it to her, and she had her drink and her paper, and all was right in the world for that reason. And it really made me so grateful to this company that is doing truly meaningful work. We came in contact with a lot of people who worked with the elderly, and I'm sure anybody watching this who has an elderly parent or loved one knows there's a constant parade of physical therapists and doctors and nurses and consultants and hospice people. And I really can say from the bottom of my heart that nobody cared the way the New Wave home care people did. And it was just obvious. And I can tell you, on one weekend towards the end of my mom's life, I got a knock on the door on a Saturday morning when right before the new caregiver was supposed to come, and it was the weekday caregiver who was bringing her 2-year-old daughter to meet my mom, who loved children. And this woman had taken time out of her free time to introduce my mom to her daughter, and my mom didn't really know who it was, but she was so happy to hold this little girl on her lap and get to know her. And I felt so good that my mom had that chance to be a part of the world and part of the lives of the people taking care of her, and it really meant a lot. My mom wasn't easy. My mom was not a pussycat. You know, she would lock people out of the house. She would, you know, ask why she was in prison some days. And where I sort of would pause and really be unsure how to handle it, the caregivers would instantly glide in and say, well, Mary, you're here at home and we're taking care of you. What kind of ice cream would you like right now? And lo and behold, in 5 minutes, she'd be eating a bowl of ice cream, chatting with them, and kind of looking at me suspiciously, wondering who I was and why I was coming into this house with these nice people. It's very clear to me that New Wave Home Care has a lot of systems at work. We had a lot of employees come and go from New Wave Home Care, and they were all people I would trust. There were people I trusted with my beloved mother. There were people I trusted in her home with a lot of beautiful things in it. And they were people I trusted to handle things well under stress. My mother once locked out a new caregiver. She didn't know who she was, and she locked her out. And I rushed over because I got a call from the caregiver saying, your mother's locked me out, which we do. And I drove over, and by the time I got there, the caregiver had talked my mom into unlocking the door, and my mom was eating a sandwich, and everything was fine. And I wouldn't have known how to deal with that kind of problem, and indeed, I probably would have escalated it. I was just really pleased with the care that she got. I feel like I want to share as well, towards Christmas time, she died in January, but towards Christmas, I had a business trip that took me to Portland and I didn't want to go, but I had to. So I went up to Portland, leaving Mom in the 24-hour care of New Wave Home Care at home, and she stopped eating shortly before I left. And for 3 or 4 days, she did not eat at all and barely drank. And I was up in Portland freaking out, thinking this is it. And the caregiver, who was just a young woman, like not somebody, clearly wasn't that old, knew enough to try different foods, and she got my mom eating again. And by the time we got home from Portland, she was eating scrambled eggs and drinking Diet Pepsi, her favorite, and doing great. And it literally gave my mom a few extra weeks to enjoy with her family, and we had a beautiful Christmas. And I know that woman from the New Wave Home Care service, that I know that the woman from New Wave Home Care saved her life, literally saved her life, and just by taking a little extra time to figure out what did she like to eat and how could I get her to eat it, by asking questions, thinking outside the box, she got my mom sort of back on track. And we had a wonderful Christmas. And towards the end, when my mom could no longer get out of bed at all, the New Wave Home Care people would always come and bathe her, wash her hair, put lotion on her skin so her skin was soft and clean. They did laundry. Everything was lovely, and it never felt like she was abandoned or ignored or even disliked. They all treated my mother as if it was their own mother, and that was just so wonderful. And it's a hard job. I could never, ever do something like this, but I would never put my mom, I'm so grateful I never put my mom in a home. I'm so grateful that didn't have to happen. I'm so grateful that she died at home. I'm so grateful that she was able to live out her last days at home with New Wave Home Care, making that possible. The atmosphere in my mom's home towards the end was not funereal. It was pleasant, and there would be music playing, and the TV was on to my mom's favorite station. My mom couldn't watch Fox News anymore. She had no idea what was going on, but it was on because that's what she liked to have on. And I'm sure the young woman who was caring for her may not have been a fan of these people, but she had it on for my mom, and she had the old time music on and the radio in the kitchen, and it just was homey and happy. And I just know that made such a world of difference. And while we were devastated by my mom's death, I really took great comfort in the fact that she passed with dignity and with love. And I can't thank New Wave Home Care enough for that. And there are a lot of testimonials out there and a lot of people talking about a lot of different companies, but I can say from my heart, this was really a special experience, and I am forever grateful. Thank you, New Wave Home Care.
A 14-minute improv by Sarah Kelly.
Was that just, I was waving bugs away?
Well, on occasion, but it made you look like you're not a stiff statue.
Okay, do you want more?
I don't know. I mean, that's great, but I think not like I'm upset. I'm saying, well, what else could I possibly need? My only last question I ask people is, how about those folks that are on the fence? Kind of sounds like a good idea, but I don't know. It's kind of expensive.
Okay,
Maybe
good idea.
My cousin could look after her.
All right.
So let me just double check, and that's still all good, and we're still all rolling. All right, take a breath, and here we go. People on the fence, what would you like to tell them? Tell me.
I'd like to share too, having somebody in your home caring for your elderly parent or loved one is not a decision anyone would make lightly. Initially, I thought, I'll do it myself. I'll save some money. I'll take care of her. It'll be okay. I have to tell you, emotionally, it was such a big deal to walk with Mom on her final journey home, to be her advocate with the doctors, to start preparing things for a transition of how things were going to work for her finances and the home and the house and her life and her friends. And there was so much to take care of that taking care of her too quickly became exhausting and limiting for her, in that I didn't have the emotional energy to take her to the park. I didn't have the emotional energy to make sure she had lipstick on in the morning. It was really survival mode. I don't know. One time I tried to change my mom's diaper, and I remember I have children of my own, but I remember I was trying to change her diaper and I had her legs like up like this, and I remember she gave me this look like, "Who are you and what are you doing?" And I realized I don't know how to do this. And then I had New Wave Home Care come in, and instantly, not only was she clean, but she was happier, she was well groomed, both things that were really important to her. She was eating her familiar foods, the house was clean, everything was kind of back to normal with their help. And it freed me up emotionally to make some other decisions and take care of some other business for her that she could no longer take care of. And it took a measure of worry and anxiety and fear away from me. And as she got more and more debilitated, I found it increasingly reassuring to have people who had been trained in how to handle memory care patients and who knew how to get her outside and go for a little walk, or to get her to eat when she wasn't going to eat anything, or to listen to some music. She really had fun. I mean, there were times when she really had fun with them, and I remember walking in and seeing Marta looking at one of the ladies from Home Care, New Wave Home Care. I remember coming home, looking and walking in the door to see Marta, one of the New Wave Home Care ladies, sitting with my mom on the sofa, going through an old photo album that Marta had found. And my mom, who was really unable to identify us or her, what year it was or where she was, could name every single person in the photos for Marta, and proudly was pointing out, well, this is the dog I had when I was 6 years old, Friday, and this was my mom, and this was our house that I lived in growing up. And it just felt so important to see that kind of interaction. And honestly, I think if I had been home alone with her, there's no way I could have provided that. I would have been too stressed and exhausted and cranky. It's like a new person. It's like living with somebody who you don't recognize, and they certainly don't recognize you either. So it was like having fresh eyes. And as some of the choices we had to make towards the end of her life became apparent, it was really helpful to ask the New Wave Home Care people, how does she seem to you? Does she seem like she's getting better? Does she seem like she's getting worse? Does she seem about the same? Having a fresh, educated pair of eyes on the situation and a calm demeanor really helped. When my mother called the police the first time, we had a neighbor coming over, and my mom mistook him for a burglar, so without anyone knowing, she ran in and called the police, who showed up, you know, that there was an intruder. And of course it was the New Wave home care lady and my mom, and this poor neighbor had gone back inside his house. I would have freaked out. And in fact, when I got the call from the caregiver what had happened, I'd rushed over, and I would have been apoplectic. And this caregiver was like, everything's fine, here's her information, here's my information, and everything was okay. And my mom, most importantly, was not upset and was kept calm by the fact that this lady knew what was going on. I always felt like the nurse on call at New Wave as well was always available to discuss any concerns I had about her diet and her health, and when was it time to take her to the doctor, and when was it time to, you know, just see how it went. Doctors are really busy, and as much as you want to talk to them every day of the week, they can't. And having the New Wave home care people overseeing the case, credentialed nurses, really made me feel so much more secure that medical professionals were looking over her shoulder at all times to make sure things were going well, and that she was doing okay. And that really added a measure of comfort as well. If it's an option for people, it's a no-brainer to me. This is something, my mom worked really hard in her life to give us what she didn't have growing up, and it was surely the least I could do for her to make sure in her life, when the chips were down, that she had the best quality of life and the most dignity and comfort that she could possibly have. My mother I've heard horror stories of people visiting their families in really good nursing homes where their parents are parked in front of a television or at a bingo thing. My mom hated bingo. She really didn't like people sometimes. Like, she didn't want to participate in group events or square dancing or, you know, folk songs. She wanted to just be at home and look at her paper and watch Fox News and live her life. And the setup with home care with New Wave really allowed us to do that. And they were non-judgmental, they were kind, they were personable, and it was not an easy job. But when I left at night to go sleep in my own bed at home, I knew she was in good hands. And they keep notebooks. When you come in the morning, you can flip through the notebook to see how she did at 4 o'clock in the morning. Did she have her pills? Somebody was on it all the time. And as she became increasingly confused, she would be up all the time too. But, you know, when she woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and asked for pancakes, the lady made them for her. Like, it wasn't like a situation where somebody said, go back to bed, there's no pancakes until 8 a.m. The lady made her a full breakfast. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And you know what? That was awesome. I certainly couldn't have done that. And it was just a beautiful thing. So I think in a time when your loved one or elderly family member is having trouble, if the resources are there, if it's just a really kind, loving thing to do for your parent, to make sure that they are treated with dignity and kindness and respect. And at the end of my life, I hope New Wave Home Care is still around in 70 years to take care of me too. Absolutely, because there's just no, and in today's climate of illness and trouble, I just think having somebody there with your parent at home, that's truly, that there's nothing else that would be more desirable, really.
All right.